And what's going on, everyone? Welcome on into the Check Your Brain podcast. My name is Tony Mazur. Good to have you here. Thank you for listening for free over on Apple Podcasts, as I'm showing here on the screen. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I believe they call them now podcatchers. So go check it out, the Check Your Brain podcast. If you want more content from me, go over to my Patreon at patreon.com/Tony Mazur. You can subscribe over there for well, free. You can. I'm just not going to give you a lot of content. This show today, the audio only, will be available for free on Patreon. But if you want the good stuff, go over to my Patreon and subscribe for as little as $3 a month. $3 gives you most audio podcasts. $5 gives you audio and video, and $10 gives you extra content. I give you an extra podcast a week in the $10 tier, along with everything else at patreon.com/Tony Mazur. Enough about my podcast. Let's talk about someone else's podcast and the guest that I have on. Her name is Courtney Allen. She is the host of the Patriot Strong Podcast. Go check that out. She's all over the place, and it's good to have you here, Courtney. Thank you for doing the show.
Thank you so much for reaching out. I appreciate the time and I'm excited to have the conversation. There's so much going on, and I know both of our audiences, I feel like they're both at the at the edge of their seats waiting for the next thing to come across our table or desk, as you may say.
Yeah, the one thing about doing daily podcasts, and this is why I wanted to have you on a week after, we're recording this on Monday, a week after the inauguration. And the problem, I guess the one problem we do run into is that recording something on Monday for it to go out Tuesday or Wednesday, there's going to be 10 other things that will pop up in between that.
Yes.
And they're like, you're still talking about that? That was 2 days ago. Yeah, that's when we recorded it, dummy. But that's what's going to happen. There's so much going on that it's hard to keep up. However, the way I look at it is you got to talk about these things. You have to put them out. And if you do a daily podcast, these are good for the archives. Now, you probably know Tom Woods, right?
Oh, yeah.
Tom Woods, the
Familiar.
podcaster, the Tom Woods Show. He has a book out. I got it from my dad for his birthday last year, The Diary of COVID, about talking about the hysteria that went on from the beginning. And what he did was he took his newsletters that he was putting out daily and was adding a date to them, like, here's what was talked about. And as he was combing through them, he's like, I forgot about this. I forgot about this crazy thing they tried to push for about a day and it didn't work. And I forgot about this that they pushed for a week and that also didn't work. So it's good to have these things documented. So then when you do look back and it's December of 25, you say, gosh, what was going on in January? And you listen and you go, oh, that's right. They did do that. And I forgot about that because the news cycle told us we can't talk about that anymore after Friday.
Yeah, exactly. And, just to have it documented that, we were alive during the greatest time to be alive, experiencing all these things firsthand, meeting some amazing people, traveling across the country to various events, getting to see some of these people that are in, the administration now. It's really, really cool to be able to say, like, hey, yeah, I was there, I lived through it, I met these people, they're friends.
It's amazing when you think back to 2016, which doesn't seem like long ago, but when you're dealing with generations, and I talk about generation gaps on my podcast a lot, I'm sure you do as well, is that Generation Z, who's, I think they said 1997 to 2012. Well, you think about someone born in 1997, the oldest of Gen Z was their first election was 2016. But you talk to somebody born after that, they were a child. They don't remember
Right.
what it was like in 2016. And as great as that felt after Donald Trump for us, those of us on the right hand of the political spectrum, it was fun. It was fun. People wearing hats, having parties. But there was something very unsettling as soon as he took office, and it didn't feel like a win. I believe Jim Goad said that. It's like we won, but we didn't win. We don't feel like we won because immediately as soon as Trump took office, it was Russia, Russia, Russia gate. Donald Trump's getting urinated on by hookers in the bedrooms, and here's this going on,
Yes.
and we're worshiping Robert Mueller. Then the Me Too scandal happened, and there were other things that were popping up, and culminating with Brett Kavanaugh in 2018. And then as soon as the Mueller report came out that it was a big nothing burger in 2019. Then the perfect phone call with Ukraine. And then after that was COVID. And immediately you woke up, you said, that 4 years went by like that. And it didn't seem like we felt wanting. We were edging. We wanted something more. So it seems like just in 1 week of Donald Trump becoming president, it really reversed a lot of that feeling that I had 8 years ago at this time.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And, I wasn't that into politics. I mean, I would imagine we're around the same age. I really wasn't into politics that much until, after I had already been in college, seen all of these things pop up, and like wanted to share my own opinion. And my podcast started because the news wasn't getting out. Mainstream media told what they wanted to tell and how they wanted to tell it. And I knew that people wanted the truth, and they were only seeking mainstream media because they had nowhere else to turn to, or they didn't know where to turn to. And I felt like, I'm sure you did, like many of the other podcasters in our kind of movement felt, we have to be the ones to bring the truth to the forefront.
Was there a specific moment that red pilled you?
So I guess what started everything, not so much red pill, but it kind of led into everything. My husband and I were at a event for Trump on the campaign rally like 2 times ago here in Cincinnati. And I got a text message saying like, hey, is the event still going on? The news is showing people leaving. They're showing like nobody showed up, all this stuff. So I FaceTimed, my friend. I'm like, no, we are fully packed. I don't know what mainstream media is telling you. But, after we stayed, we listened to the event. We heard Trump speak, Giuliani speak, all these amazing people. And the next morning, I listened to clips and bits that mainstream media had put out, realizing how much they spliced what Trump had said, how they misdirected what Trump said. And that kind of started me down this, like, hey, they just lied to everybody on TV about what's going on. And then I just dug in from there. A really cool series that I kind of started to watch that kind of opened my eyes a lot was The Fall of Cabal.
Yes. Yeah, it is interesting when you mention about the time in 2016 where there were people were it was there were like all these fake things were popping up. Oh, it was a bunch of Nazi salutes were happening here, and this person says go back to Africa, and none of it happened. Or if it did
Right.
happen, it was one random actor who was quote unquote trolling, as I heard. One of them, it was somebody's like, yeah, no, that didn't actually happen. That's a guy who was trying to get a viral video out to make it seem like something it wasn't. And I think a lot of people did get red pilled when it came to Trump, because especially if you're a Christian, and you still hear this even to this day from the moment we're recording this, with all the talk about deportation. How could you be Christian and want people sent back to other countries? And you say, yeah, I'm not falling for this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not falling for your game. I'm not falling for your language of reshaping things. I'm not playing into your emotional plays that you want us to. We've been down this road. You tried this 8 years ago. It worked a little bit then, but people have woken up. There's been a lot that's happened in people's lives in order for them to not trust you anymore with this garbage you're trying to push.
Yeah, and I love to see, more and more people be loud about what's really happening. That's all my news feed is now versus, I can remember whenever people were kind of quiet or tiptoed around what's going on. And now everybody's just so sick of the crap that, we've put up the last 4 years, the last 8 years, the last 12, 16, whatever. They're just tired of it. So we, the people, are standing up and exposing the truth, the actual truth that mainstream media keeps hidden and undercover.
It's not so much even just truth, it's common sense.
Yeah.
And one thing that really started showing its head going into the election of 2024, and then the results of it and what we've seen in the 70 plus days since Trump won and when he was inaugurated, was it was a return to common sense. And the push for so many years that Donald Trump in 2016 was nonsensical, that he was an anomaly, he was abnormal, that we need to return to normal in 2020, that all the mean tweets and this and everything is crazy. We need to return to normalcy. We need to bring this grandpa back that we've remade from being a curmudgeonly jackass and make him out to be this grandfather who cares about his people. In reality, it was 2020 that was the abnormal year, as we all know, but it was an abnormal election, and it returned us to even more abnormalcy as opposed to righting the ship and focusing on common sense.
No, I absolutely agree with you. I really just love that, people are just fed up with it. They seen what they were trying to push. Then we've all experienced stuff like you said. We've all been affected. Our family's been affected. The last 4 years with the lies and the manipulation, the scare factors. And, we kind of see it kind of peeping in again, and not from Trump, of course, but trying to manipulate us from the other side, even still, with like, oh, if you agree with the deportations, then you're this, or that. The side of love and tolerance is the side of name calling and bullying.
Yeah, that's it, and it's using their language when they say that. Oh no, we'll. No, this is see. We're doing this for the greater good. What do you mean the greater good? Because it doesn't seem like this was helping the greater good. And I think a lot of people did wake up after the what we like to colloquially call the Summer of George in 2020 with the riots, and then you see with the pardoning of the J6ers. It's honestly, it's interesting when I think back to documenting this moment. It is the normalcy of the Trump movement, of the MAGA movement. So you probably know the meme of the bell curve, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for people who know the bell curve meme, it's the guy on this side of the curve at the beginning and the guy at the end. They say and believe the exact same thing. Then there's this bell curve, this curve, and at the top it's the, well, actually, Donald Trump has been known in the public since what? The late 1970s. If you're from New York, you did not open up the New York Times, the New York Post, the Daily News without seeing something about Trump, whether it was a business deal or some kind of affair he was having with some celebrity or some model. It was all over the place. You knew who he was. He was normalized. He was mainstream. He guest starred on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He was on Sex and the City. He was in Zoolander. He had a cameo in the 1994 Little Rascals movie.
Home Alone?
Which, by the way, Bug Hall, who's in there, is, you want to talk about one of the most based individuals now. Go check him out on social media. He's a dream guest for me to have on my podcast, Bug Hall, who played Alfalfa in that movie. The Donald Trump was normal for years. We all know who he was. It was like, yeah, occasionally he would do a couple of things where he'd say the birther controversy with the birth certificate, and they didn't take him seriously until he started becoming a threat to the establishment. And then it was, he's abnormal. Well, now we're seeing this arc where, no. It's not that Trump was abnormal, it's that we were abnormal as well. And now we're back to that normalization and that incentive structure where you can say, yeah, I supported him. There was a time when you would, if you said you voted for him at the office, you would get called into HR. You would have female employees that feel that you're harassing them because you had a Trump Pence 2016 sticker on your car. And if you got back to your car, you might be afraid your car got broken into or a rock thrown through the windshield. There was that whole time where you couldn't say that you supported a very popular candidate who got over 70-something million votes. That's gone now. And we're righting the ship and we're returning once again to common sense.
And I love that, not only that, but it seems like America is turning back to the foundation that we were founded on and the foundation that we built our country on, the foundations and the truths and the pillars that our forefathers fought for to make America great the first time.
So let's talk about the first week of Trump being in office. And he gets inaugurated. It's just after 12 noon in Washington, D.C. on January 20th, 2025. And almost immediately, I'm surprised the man does not have carpal tunnel syndrome based on how many EOs he was signing. But you'd say, well, he's signing too many executive orders instead of going through the whole, I'm just a bill. Yeah, I'm only a bill. You know what? Obama said, I have a pen and a phone, and I'm not afraid to use either. Sorry, that's the way of the world now. And unless you're going to play the politics that have already been set up for you, you know, you got to do what you got to do. And that first week, the man was doing press conferences as he's doing executive orders. He's double tasking. Whereas the previous guy is asleep comatose on a beach in Delaware as Maui's burning down. So talk
Literally.
about that first week with the executive orders, with the Pete Hegseth and everything. What were your thoughts on that first week of the second administration?
I think that his nominations for administration, and they're now being confirmed, they're being voted on to be confirmed. Everybody that he's nominated is great. The only thing that I have kind of an issue with, or the only person I've had an issue with so far, and his name slips my mind, but I'm sure that you know exactly who I'm talking about, is the AI, the Stargate, the
Oh
thing that
yeah.
they were talking about that. I'm not entirely so sure that I'm really fond of chips for AI cures for cancer. Don't know about the whole AI thing, but the fact that Trump was signing executive orders on stage at the rally that had, taken place while they were still in DC before they went to the balls. It was just one thing after another. And I know everybody is so excited about the Epstein lists finally being revealed once Kash Patel is confirmed for his spot on the administration. There are talks. I mean, we've already seen the immigrants, the illegal immigrants that, were here illegally being sent back to their countries. And I think this took place yesterday. The president of Colombia put out a statement saying that he wasn't going to accept any of the immigrants that were flown, from the United States. And then Trump said, okay, well, if you're not going to do that, then tariffs on your country. And then, like, right after that, the president of Colombia, he's like, okay, actually, we'll take them back. And you know what? I'll fly my presidential plane to pick them up. Like,
Yeah, isn't
Trump,
that great?
a businessman. He's not a politician. He's a businessman, and he knows how to get things done.
Yeah, the difference is already so stark from the first Trump administration to the second. And Trump has admitted, he doesn't admit he's wrong on a lot of things, but you can, if you know him well enough, which we do, you read between the lines, and he mentioned it on Joe Rogan, and I think he mentioned it on maybe Theo Vaughn or one of the other podcasts, where he did mention about John Bolton, or maybe it was Tucker he was talking to, that John Bolton, that Mike Pompeo, some of these guys were swamp creatures, but he admitted, when I got to Washington, yeah, I wanted to set things on fire, wanted to change things, figuratively, of course. But I didn't really know that many people, so I trusted some of the wrong people who said, "Oh yeah, you get John Bolton. Yeah, he's going to scare people. He's going to scare Iran. He's going to scare all these." And now he knows better
Yep.
because MAGA is not a passing fad. I understand there's neocons out there like the aforementioned Pompeo who are waiting in the wings and laying low until they feel that the MAGA movement is over, kind of the way Reagan, his administration carried on into that first term with George H.W. Bush, but it wasn't the same. It's not. Donald Trump is his own creature, but there has to be another generation. There has to be a bullpen, and we're starting to see that bullpen get filled with, especially J.D. Vance, with him bodying Margaret Brennan over the weekend on CBS News. Goodness gracious, that he just unleashing J.D. Vance and so many of these other people like Pete Hegseth, just Jay Bhattacharya, RFK Jr., people who were former Democrats that understand what we're going for, that it's not necessarily partisan, it's ideological, it's cultural,
Right.
and things really need to change.
And going back to all of these politicians who may have been Democrats before, and they're kind of leaving their party now because their party isn't the same. The Democratic Party from 30, 40, 50 years ago is not the same as it is now. And I think they're realizing that. And they're realizing, you know what? That might not work for America. That's not where America needs to be. We just experienced the worst, 4 years of my lifetime, or my adult lifetime, I think, with all of these kind of DEI, doesn't matter how qualified you are, as long as you check the boxes kind of deal with, administration, military, teaching, all these things. And we're finally seeing that retract a little bit. So, our military can be strong. And the Secret Service that is protecting our president can be strong. And our teachers, they can actually teach what children need to learn and not be indoctrinated by some stupid diversity, equity, and inclusion curriculum. And, I can speak on that personally because that happened to me.
Well, really, what happened there since you have personal experience?
Yeah, sure. I have my degree in early childhood education, graduated from the University of Cincinnati, taught at a private kindergarten for 8 years. We were shut down for 3 months in COVID, March of 2020. I think we opened back up in June. One day I walked into work, was handed an 83-page LGBT curriculum for Pride Month to teach my 4 and 5-year-olds, including vocabulary like transgender, homophobic, lesbian, gay, bisexual, again, to 4-year-olds. Stood up, exposed that. But, it's not just in daycares, and we've seen this all across, all these parents are standing up in school board meetings for their public schools that, are doing the exact same thing, keeping kids, like what they want to be called or their pronouns, hidden from parents. Is just the start of what had happened. And if we would have got Kamala in office, it would have been so much worse.
Doesn't it feel that America dodged a bullet? I mean, Trump got nicked by the bullet. Of course, we lost Cory Comparator, but America truly, almost literally dodged a bullet. And that we would have had Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, whoever it would have been, against a Nikki Haley, a Raytheon
Right.
representative. Boy, that field at 6 p.m. in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th, 2024 could have changed the entire world. It absolutely would have, and it would have been a completely different world had that happened.
Exactly. And, I remember watching it happen, and it was kind of surreal. We hear about, Kennedy, and the truth is going to come out about him. That's another executive order that Trump just signed to unveil the Kennedy files. And it just kind of like, did that actually happen? People hate somebody that much of that big power that they would be willing to do that. It's disgusting.
And it's even worse when you think about the rhetoric for so many years about Donald Trump is Hitler. He's a Nazi. He's a threat to democracy. Well, eventually somebody was going to want to take up arms and say, I could very well be a hero if I'm the one who stops Orange Hitler from becoming president again. And then when he does get shot, there is that little bit of time when you had politicians from Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi to squad members such as AOC and Ilhan Omar wishing Donald Trump well. And I'm thinking, wait a second, isn't he Hitler? Don't you want to see Hitler dead? Right? We keep hearing about, well, if you had a time machine, you'd kill baby Hitler, wouldn't you? Then at Jimmy Carter's funeral a couple of weeks ago, Barack Obama's yucking it up with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Again, I was told for years by you that he was Adolf Hitler reincarnated, and yet you're yucking it up with the Fuhrer. Something tells me that you were being a little bit disingenuous with your rhetoric over time, and that it is dangerous. That when we've heard about words hurt, and a lot of conservatives, we would talk about, oh, words hurt. Oh, sticks and stones may break my bones. But eventually somebody did take up arms on a slanted roof in Pennsylvania and have an almost open shot at the president of the United States with HD cameras and live TV. His head was millimeters from getting blown off on television. And then it almost happened again 2 months later outside of Mar-a-Lago with this lunatic pro-Ukraine
Right.
NAFO baby. And again, it seemed everything was so crazy, and he still won. Isn't this amazing?
And that's kind of where you mentioned them being disgenuine. I kind of think that they wanted to make themselves look good by sending out these, well wishes and well hopes. I think that they truly thought that they might win again, and they didn't want, that to be like a chip on their shoulder, or like something like, oh, I can't believe you didn't do this whenever this happened. And I think a lot of true colors have really unveiled themselves. I mean, we've seen AOC said that she skipped the inauguration because she didn't support what Trump said, or
Said that
Big
he was a
Mike, he didn't
rapist.
show up.
She said that he was a rapist. She didn't
Right.
support rapists. And I'm thinking, you do realize ABC News and George Stephanopoulos were recently sued for like 15, $16 million for saying basically that exact thing.
And Trump just won those lawsuits. Maybe not those exact lawsuits, but he just won defamation lawsuits. I forget who it was, but literally within the past 2 weeks. Of course, we didn't hear about that. $20 million, I think that was the lawsuits for defamation. Like, okay, AOC, go ahead and say it again.
It's truly incredible when you think of the political realignment. I've talked about it. I'm sure you have on your podcast as well about the realignment going on. That you had mentioned that Tulsi Gabbard, that Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, RFK Jr., and oh, by the way, Donald Trump, these were all registered Democrats not too darn long ago. And yet they've come over to the party. Yet you have longtime Republicans like Mitch McConnell, who's voting against Pete Hegseth's nomination, which, he's now in there, but he was one of the three dissenters with Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. And then you have others like Bill Kristol, who is openly supporting Kamala Harris, and Michael Medved and National Review types. There is a political realignment going on. But the Republicans seem to want to win elections. Weird to think that. But it seemed like instead of being the Washington Generals to the Harlem Globetrotters, where they're just playing, maybe they'll win an election every so often, but they're controlled opposition, you're finally seeing people on the right say, no, we want to win elections and we want to wield our power instead of just getting in office and shrugging our shoulders and letting Democrats and neocons take over our party. Then you have the Democrats. Now, here's what I wanted to ask you especially. Do they continue with this woke stuff? Or are they going to have to go back to the drawing board and say, we have to find a way to reach out to that suburban Midwest blue collar voter?
I think that they would try to continue it as much as they can. There's already been so many pushbacks with the transgender in the military. I'm sure there's going to be tons of comments on that. I think that just came out recently. With it in schools, especially targeting minors, the sexualization of minors with all of this, which is kind of weird that they would even push it in the first place. I understand more so, like, if you're an adult and that's the kind of life you want to live, like, you do you, I guess. But the fact that they wanted to indoctrinate minors on this thing, or the fact that they wanted to bring it to the forefront and have the heads of military and dress, or the heads of, our healthcare in wigs and dresses, or whatever it may be. I think that showed their weakness of mental stability, and we've seen that now. So I don't think that they can get away with it much. I do think that they will still try it, though.
Isn't it? It's crazy to think about. Just a couple of years ago, we were having Dylan Mulvaney shoved down our throats about how beautiful this woman is. What a just gorgeous. Please, Bud Light. Please, Nike. Please go Lululemon and all these other organizations. Please sponsor this beautiful trans woman. And Americans at the time said, no, we're not doing this. And the Pride Parade of 2023, where you had a transgender woman, meaning a biological man who gussied himself up, got fake breasts, and put a lot of makeup on, is jiggling his breast implants topless at the White House in front of others who've had top surgery, who are women, who are now men. So I don't even know what you censor there as far as YouTube goes. But it was Sodom and Gomorrah territory, that Joe Biden is up there saying how trans people are the bravest people he knows. Not his military son who
Right.
died in the Battle of Lexington, or the thing. Anyways, no, Bo didn't die in any war, Joe, and making it about himself. But to think that was just 2 years ago. And to think that even a year ago at this very time, at the end of January, it was understood that Trump is probably going to be is probably going to be the nominee, and that Ron DeSantis put up a good fight. Nikki Haley was backed by a lot of organizations, and Vivek was saying the right thing at the time. But did we really think it was going to be this much of a figurative bloodbath going into the election? That the response from the yes girl, yes queen, Brett Summer, Kamala Harris stuff, that we all knew that she was a unqualified DEI candidate. Joe Biden said as such, and she
Literally.
got shellacked at the polls, lost the popular vote, lost the electoral vote, and they really, it seems like the Dems haven't had an answer. It doesn't seem like the protests have been as massive as they were 8 years ago. I think they're tired. I think they wore themselves out.
Yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from whenever you say that. And I think also, just kind of playing on that, they see that maybe their ideals isn't what's best for America. I know that we've said that before in this podcast so far, but they realize that marking off a box for somebody to hold a position isn't really what needs to be done. We need to have skillful workers, skillful people, men and women, to fulfill these positions, because it's not about DEI. No matter how much you want to make it about that, it's not about that. And I think that it's slowing down because they are realizing they can't do much more. Like I said, I still think that they're going to try it. They're going to push back on all of these executive orders. No men and women's sports, no more drag queen story hours for, toddlers at your local library. They're going to try it. But like you said, they're realizing the pendulum swung very far to the left, and it's going to swing right back to our side.
So as we do this podcast, I think Newsmax even has a tracker on TV of the deportations that are going on. Which is hilarious. It's fantastic. But as we mentioned earlier about how, oh, you're not a Christian if you think it's right, and all the way up to the Pope. That Pope Francis is saying that it's because I'm Catholic, and to say that the Pope kind of goes against what a lot of fellow Catholics believe, especially with getting rid of the Latin Mass in many communities. But him saying that you're not a good Catholic if you believe in deportation. They're like, okay, but there are walls around the Vatican. Why don't you accept
Exactly.
them? It's the immigration debate. It takes on a different world, because it's not so much that we hate brown people and we don't want brown people in our community. That's never what it's been about. However, when you realize that towns like Charleroi, Pennsylvania, which is down the Monongahela River just south of Pittsburgh, a town of 4,000 people, had 2,000 Haitians that were flown there by NGOs. I don't know. I'm no map major, but I don't think you can get to from Haiti to Pennsylvania on foot. It seems to me you were flown in there. Well, who's sending you there? Which NGO is it? Is it the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society? Is it Catholic Charities? I don't know. That needs to be investigated. When you take a town like Charleroi or Springfield, Ohio,
Yeah.
that has been completely taken over, that changes the culture of the town. Again, we've lived in a multicultural society, not by our choice, our entire lives, but we made it work for some reason. However, there's been a lot of people, a lot of normies who've woken up and realized, I don't recognize my country anymore. I don't recognize my community. When I go on vacation, this used to be where I would find Americans. Now, they could be black Americans, white Americans, whoever. Everywhere you go, no one's speaking English. And they wanted to know what happened to their country, and if it was done because we care about the plight of immigrants, newcomers, dreamers, whatever we want to call them nowadays in the new speak. Or was this done by design to change voting patterns, to get a permanent supermajority as far as Democrat voting goes? And I think it's more of the latter. I don't believe in the competence crisis as much as I probably would have maybe a year or two ago. I think a lot of it was malicious in a way of, oh, I don't know, that great replacement term of changing a lot of things going on. And I think if you're a conservative, you, as we said earlier, you don't fall for their games, their little tactics that they've been trying to push. They're trying to run it back with all this stuff from 8 years ago. It's time to just put up your middle finger and say no to this.
And I really think, playing off of what you had just said too, that it kind of backfired on them, letting all of these illegal immigrants in, promising them $1,200 a month, free food, free health care, free housing, free cell phones, free this, free that. And you still didn't win. Like, you know what I mean? Like, no matter how many people you try to convince to like try to convince to vote for you, it's not happening. They just came from that. Why would they want to return to that? We watched, and I forget her name too as well. Names escape me so often, but the national prayer on Tuesday, whenever she was like, "Oh, I pray that you take mercy on the workers who tend to the farms and who work overnight and this and that, and all of the people that are now so afraid for their lives." I'm like, come on. And there was, part in the clip that I watched where JD Vance literally like looks like he just rolls his eyes and like tries to keep from laughing. I'm like, they're trying to gaslight, the president of the United States by saying things like that, and it just makes them all look so absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and they're creating a false idol for her, like they did with Fauci and all these others, that she stood up to power. She's the resistance.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, these are limousine liberals. This is a woman who is the conducting Protestant services in Washington, D.C. The limousine liberal, we need to bring that term back, because you notice whenever they bring up immigration, it's always about food. It's always about either who's going to pick your crops, which is, that sounds a little racist to me.
Right, exactly.
Or it's, well, your tacos. See, with the Colombia thing, it's like, well, what about your coffee? I can make my own damn coffee. Well, what about your guacamole? You won't have guacamole with your tortilla chips anymore. You won't have tortilla. Fine. Fine. I'll eat Lay's then. I'll eat Doritos. It's not a big deal. If I go the rest of my life without having green paste, I like avocado. I had an avocado toast yesterday. I like guacamole. I can go the rest of my life without it. It doesn't matter to me. But every time they bring it up, it's always about lawn care, and it's always about food and labor with immigrants instead of accepting them, because that's what they do. They say, oh, we need more of them for our community. But then by 5 o'clock, when the kids come home and dinner's already cooked, yeah, go back to the bus stop. Go home, and we don't need you until tomorrow, or we don't need you till Monday. It's such it's a caste system, and that's what's going on in California, and nobody wants to talk about it, and they don't want to accept them in their own home. They just want them in other neighborhoods.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I feel like a lot of fallback, or what people try and fall back on, is their statements that America is a country, a melting pot, a country full of immigrants. What they don't realize is there's different ways to do this. Just like we weren't founded on illegal immigration. They all came through. They had to sign their names. They made a life for themselves, but they did it legally. Coming over here, I think Trump just tried to revoke, what is it called? The birthright citizenship.
Yes.
And a federal judge is halting that right now because for whatever reason, they feel like it would make more sense. It's better for the economy to do this and that, whatever it may be. Something that I really got into this past 4 years was Charlie Kirk going to all these college campuses and talking to the students there, asking them questions, and then they kind of like stutter over their words or their thoughts because they can't answer or they can't provide an example of things that they are claiming the far right is doing or that Donald Trump is doing, or, all of these things. They want to talk big, but they can't back it up.
Yeah, it's funny you say that about Charlie Kirk and reaching out to younger generations, because I am seeing a shift in Gen Z. I think a lot of people are as well, that Generation Z is returning to church. Gen Z
Yes.
seems to be a little bit more conservative than previous generations. You and I are millennials, and Gen X, and especially baby boomers, the old hippie liberals. Smoke them if you got them. If it feels good, do it generation. And you're seeing that because I think they saw the previous generations being led astray by secularism, by Hollywood movies, and living in that main character syndrome of just thinking that everything is about you, and you're not getting your meaning out of watching Harry Potter movies or Marvel and DC Comics movies. You're not getting meaning from reading tarot cards or looking at crystals, that they're like, wait a second, this religion thing has been around for a long time. Whereas Hollywood's been around for 100 years and is already being broken up by YouTube and TikTok and everything. So there has to be something to this. They seem to be getting a little bit more based. Now, the baby boomers are not going to go without kicking and screaming, but it is nice to see a younger generation understand that they were dealt a bad hand, as our generation was as well, with from 9/11 to economic downturn in the mid to late 2000s to COVID. But they seem to be responding a little better than people around our age who graduated high school in the mid aughts.
Yeah, no, and I love, watching all of these revivals at all of these campuses. They're returning to the foundations and the pillars that are important to America. I mean, in my opinion, um, just kind of going against the grain of like what you were just saying, what they've been introduced to, or kind of been, delivered on whatever kind of platter that, oh, you should think this way, you should do this. Look at Hollywood doing this and saying this and acting this way. And they're like, you know what? No, we can think for ourselves. We see what's going on. Um, Even though, I think a lot of colleges are very liberal, are very on the left side of teaching, and that's an issue too. But there are more and more people standing up and fighting back, and I love to see it, especially in the younger generation, because I feel like the left thought that they were going to be the most impressionable, the weakest links, the easiest to kind of coerce to their side, and that's just not what's happening.
I kind of think the Democrat Party got way too cocky for a long time. I recall I was at might have been, no, it wasn't Borders or Walden Books, but I remember I was at a bookstore many years ago, and there was a book by James Carville where it was him with a cardboard cutout of Obama. And it said instead of 4 more years, he put was holding up a piece of paper in on the cover that had a zero, meaning 40 more years. That they believed that after the neocon Bush administration and just the lame candidates that the Republican Party, even with the Tea Party, were putting forward, from whether it was George Bush, Jr. and Senior, Bob Dole, John McCain, Mitt Romney, that these milquetoast neocon candidates, that they were just going to get stomped in the general election, and that after 2016, Hillary Clinton's going to become president for 4 year or for 8 years, and then we'll have another bench and put up somebody like a Gavin Newsom or who's ever going to be the big Democrat candidate at the time, and by the time they got to 2024. And they overplayed their hand a couple of times. I think the first one was the filibuster with Harry Reid. The other was expecting that Hillary Clinton was not only going to win, which is why they propped up Donald Trump in 2015, and he was on Morning Joe with Mika every day, is that they didn't think he had any shot at winning. And so we got to prop up this guy as an Operation Chaos, as Rush Limbaugh used to call it, to have Hillary Clinton. But in that time, shouldn't they have found a way to push Ruth Bader Ginsburg to the side? And instead, it's like, oh, no, here's what'll happen is that when Hillary becomes president, Ruth Bader Ginsburg's going to retire, and then we're going to add somebody to the Supreme Court who's in her 40s, who will be on the court for another 35, 40 years, and it'll be no problem. We'll have this absolute majority. We got really cocky with the Obergefell decision, and gay marriage is the law of the land, and trans bathrooms, and this, and this, and Obamacare, and Pajama Boy. And none of that happened. It all backfired on them. And then eventually
Exactly.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies a month before the election. And Donald Trump in 4 years got three Supreme Court candidates. And you know what? he may get more this time around too, because Clarence Thomas may retire, and we're going to get someone even younger who's a little bit more like-minded and MAGA going forward. So, hey, everything it seems like that they really pushed for and thinking that there's going to be a return to normalcy backfired on them. And now you're seeing this Trump MAGA coalition getting way stronger and the woke Democrats needing to find what their next step is other than calling everyone a racist Nazi.
No, especially the last 4 years with us being censored, silenced, shadow banned on all these platforms, deplatformed on, in some cases. I think that just made us stronger. The more that they tried to cut us down, the stronger it made us. And I love seeing, patriotic podcasts. People meet up at these events like you and I both attended this past summer. People just banding together to do what's right. Trump throwing his hat in the ring and winning the first time around, that completely messed up everything. We've heard of Agenda 2030, all of these things that they had in their back pocket, that the elites had in their pocket, that they wanted to implement into our society over the 12 years that they had planned on Democrats winning the presidential election. And the fact that Trump threw his hat in and won completely threw a wrench in all of their plans. And that's when they started to hate him, because he can't be bought like all of these other people on social media can. He can't be pushed or coerced to agree with all of these elites. He has his own ideas. He has his own plans. And that's what they don't like. And I think that's why they target him so much, because he is fighting the fight against them, and they hate it.
Isn't it nice just having a president again?
Yes, an actual president. That's what I had posted on my social media, that Donald Trump did more in 4 days than Barack Obama did in 3 terms.
Yeah, the Barack Obama years, when you really started seeing this woke stuff start, and his 8 years was split into 2 groups. The first one was there's not red state America, not blue state America. It's the United States of America. It doesn't matter your background, if you're black, white, red, blue, purple, whatever. And then by the second term, it was, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. And you're going, wait, what happened to the red state, blue state, United States of America guy that you said 4 years ago? Oh no, that was fake. That was all BS. That as soon as he got into office, there was the push for the stimulus package, cash for clunkers, all this other craziness that was going on. Then the stimulus package, and then Obamacare. And then by the time you got to 2012, it was, if you don't vote for Barack Obama, you're a racist. And it was, no, I disagree with him on policy. Well, if you say that he has Marxist tendencies, that's code word for the N word. You go, what?
Right.
He's said openly in his book that he was radicalized by Saul Alinsky and Rules for Radicals, and yet if you say that he was radicalized by communists from the 60s, 70s, and the 80s, that and Bill Ayers and the Weather Underground, then that meant it was code word because you didn't like the guy's sort of darker skin tone, or that he had no scandals during his administration other than he wore a tan suit to a press conference. I'm like, oh, you could probably talk to the people in Libya and Syria and Yemen and Saudi Arabia. And, oh, by the way, the wars that he also didn't end. And it was just amazing, the whitewashing of how great Barack Obama is. But you know what? Now that Trump is back in office, that he won, he defied a lot of the odds. He stayed alive from a gunshot wound. He ended the legacies of not just, in my opinion, I don't think the Obamas are doing anything. I don't think Michelle Obama is going to run for office. That's actually beneath her as president. They can do more than just be president. He's ended the Clintons. He's ended the Bushes. He's certainly ended the Bidens. I don't see Hunter Biden running for president other than it just
Oh my
being a
gosh.
joke. So all of these legacy families, this New York twice divorced billionaire who normally you wouldn't really care too much about, that we kind of shrugged our shoulders or rolled our eyes when we saw him on TV 30 years ago. This man saved America. And he deserves all the credit. So all you libertarians out there who are not giving him credit for freeing Ross Ulbricht over the Silk Road, 2 life sentences, or it was ridiculous. That he needs to get credit because otherwise, had his brains been blown out in Pennsylvania on July 13th, vastly different world.
No, absolutely. And I think what Trump is trying to do, hopefully, maybe actually trying to unite, trying to do what's best for all of America compared to the pandering to different audiences that we've seen Kamala do on her campaign runs, with all these new and invented accents, which that's kind of demeaning and demoralizing and kind of racist that in and of itself. So those on the other side saying like, oh, calling calling people who don't support everything that Barack had been for, like you were just saying, but they're okay with Kamala switching up her talk every time that she goes and speaks to another audience group. Like that's kind of a smack in the face. So hopefully, people can kind of take a step back and realize that mainstream media has painted President Trump as such an evil spirit or an evilness. And it's really, truly, honestly not that way. He doesn't want illegal immigrants. He doesn't want child trafficking. He wants, America to be independent and for us to use our own resources again. Drill, baby, drill. He's said that multiple times. He wants, our trade to be fair. He doesn't want us to be involved with the Paris Accord. That's obviously not doing anything. He just pulled us out of the what was it, the World Health Organization, or all of these things that they want to do a big government kind of control on all of us. And that's what he's against. Small government, I think, is the way to go. Giving it back to the states, giving states the power, giving communities the power, giving we the people the power.
Last thing I wanted to mention before, and we'll wrap up the podcast after this. But it's an interesting topic because you and I don't host shows with the reach of Joe Rogan or Tucker Carlson, right? We admit that, but we're partially responsible for this. The podcasters that, as YouTube was censoring people because you said something completely unscientific, like masks don't work or social distancing was a myth, that we were deplatformed. Yet podcasts still continued finding a way to find an audience and tell the truth. And you saw that culminate in 2024. The fact that legacy media is dying. Everyone knows it, even people who work in that industry. It doesn't matter. It could be TV, it could be radio, it could be newspapers. You know you're in an industry that is literally dying off by the day because your audience that still consumes your product is older. It's a baby boomer audience. That's why every commercial is towards Pfizer and whatever weight loss drug or youth fountain of youth drug that's out there. That's who's sponsoring right now. And if those go away, then they're kind of sunk right now. And this election proved that legacy media that is kind of on the chopping block right now, that Kamala Harris didn't do podcasts other than the Call Her Daddy, which to my knowledge still hasn't cracked 1 million views on YouTube.
Right.
Yet this almost the same day, Donald Trump goes on Joe Rogan and gets 33 million within a day.
Yeah.
And then eventually all the other sites that probably had it and the podcatchers, the Spotify's and the Apple Podcasts that got this. And it proved that the clampdown of culture that we kept hearing, that pop culture, that politics, the media is all very left wing, that turned into a bit of a myth this time around because she only did that, other than Call Her Daddy, she did 60 Minutes and had that chopped up a bunch of times. And Tim Waltz couldn't do it. He's just this blithering idiot. And going to China, just a guy who likes tacos with tuna and mayonnaise on them. It's like, great, thank you. You're the ideal manly man. You and Doug Emhoff are the manly men you want to push forward. Ugh. But a lot of that was disproven. That no, they're not central casting of what a man should be. Voters rejected that. Voters weren't going to, oh gosh, Kamala Harris is on 60 Minutes. I can't wait. No, I couldn't wait to watch JD Vance go sit in with Theo Vaughn and
Yes.
just shoot the you know what, talking about it, Theo getting drunk or drugs or something. And Trump talking to Theo about drugs is like, I don't do them. What's it like? Is cocaine better than alcohol? What he doesn't know because he's never done those things. That's how on the ball
Yeah.
he is. And this election proved many different things, but I think the first of them is the biggest one was that legacy media is dying a very rapid, not a slow death anymore. It's a rapid death. And the podcasts and alternative media helped push Donald Trump over the edge. And that's not, again, a fad. That is going to be what we're going to see in 2028 and 2032. It's going to be alternative media, not
Yes.
legacy media anymore.
I think that you made a very good point. It has been the podcasters that have stuck by, finding whatever platform they can be on to make their voices heard, to bring on all of these doctors who are disproven, COVID, masks, the vaccines, what have you. Somebody that I met throughout this last 4-year period was General Flynn. I've been to many events with him, invited to private events with him. Something that he always says that I've kind of held near and dear to my heart is local action makes a national impact. So I think by that, local action, do what you can do because it will make an impact one way or the other, and maybe not right away, but eventually. Stand up, be strong, make your voice loud, make your voice heard, continue on, because, we're here now. 4 years ago, if you would have told me that I would have had a successful podcast on Spotify, I would have laughed in your face because I was the shyest person in the entire world. I would not go introduce myself to anybody. And now, I'm doing shows with doctors who have cures for cancer, with General Flynn, with, Wano Savin, another big patriot voice in our community. Going to all of these events, traveling the country, meeting all of these political candidates. I met JD Vance's mom at a little rally. Well, it wasn't little, at a rally in Middletown, which is like 10 miles up the road from me. And she's one of the nicest people. And just all of these people who are in, the spotlight right now, they're so down to earth. And I think that's a very, very different quality that they have than, people like you've mentioned that are on the left, like Tim Walz and like AOC. I don't feel like they're genuine. I don't feel like they could, shoot the shit, like you were saying, about whatever it may be. But it's
it's interesting seeing people buy into what's going on. JD Vance, who, he didn't say nice things about Trump 8 years ago, but a lot of people didn't. And then they came around to understand, oh, wait a second, this isn't just some loudmouth New Yorker who's just shooting from the hip. This guy actually knows something because he's a pragmatist. He's not an ideologue. He's not going to sit there and, quote Hayek and quote Carl Schmitt and James Burnham. And he's a guy that is just like, yeah, I'm a New Yorker. I'll get things done. Snap of a finger. Give me my Diet Coke. Here's my red Diet Coke button over here. That's what I could go for, or ice cream or a Big Mac. It's a completely different thing. And to watch people go, I didn't like him at one time, and I realized what's going on here. I didn't. Rand Paul, perfect example. Because Donald Trump is a continuation of what we see. He's basically an amalgam of Ron Paul and Pat Buchanan. That these are people who are saying the right things, but they were never traditional politicians. Pat Buchanan was a speechwriter. Ron Paul was a doctor. And so you have two people that entered politics from a different perspective, didn't just go to Harvard and become a local councilman and work your way up through the system and be corrupt. No, you had to know what you were doing, and you had to work on deals with different groups. You had to deal with the Italians in New York to build somewhere, and you deal with the Chinese and the Jews and all these other people. That's what Trump had to do this, and he did it for decades, way before he was in politics. So you don't think that Donald Trump doesn't know how to go into a tough negotiation with Xi Jinping, with Vladimir Putin, with go head on down to meet with Javier Milei, trying to figure something out in the Middle East with between Netanyahu and Gaza and Zelensky. He knows what's going on because he's always been in contentious things. And to see that people buying in like JD Vance, who I've had on my podcast a couple of times. I talked about it in last week's
Yes.
episode of how I got a chance to have him on my podcast. I got a chance to know him. I actually was on a first name basis with him in 2021 when he was throwing his hat in the ring in the U.S. Senate. I think he's a little busy right now. He probably won't return my call. But I met him with Donald Trump Jr. And when I saw that he was coming to my neck of the woods and Donald Trump Jr., because of course everyone wants to meet Don Jr., and talking to JD, he remembered who I was, and seeing the fact that this guy, who is a was a venture capitalist, had a very successful book turned into a movie, who before that served in the military, was an Ivy League grad, and oh, by the way, was an American success story from not necessarily Appalachia, because obviously where it's located, but Middletown had fallen on hard times since the 60s and the 70s, as you know. And he made something of himself. And to watch Donald Trump Jr., the blood of the former, at the time, president, give his full endorsement towards the next generation of what Make
Yes.
America Great Again means, was everything that needed to know. And then when this time a year ago, the possible VP candidates were released, and they were saying, could it be Marco Rubio? Could it be this? And someone brought up JD Vance, and I said, yes, him, absolutely. Absolutely. What he did with East Palestine, where he was the first on the ground there picking up the
Yep.
water in a cup, saying, would you drink this water? And yet our government is telling us that it's safe to drink, it's safe to bathe in. I wouldn't touch this. And the fact that he was on the ground showed me what he's going to do in fighting for it, because he saw what the government did to his family through various things, and saw
Right.
it to happen to his community. He doesn't want to see it to happen to America. So grievance politics is huge. And Donald Trump, you want to talk about someone who has grievance politics. They were going after him with every lawfare, trying to throw him in prison the rest of his life, trying to kill him. Yeah, you know what? I forgot who had the tweet, and I think you reposted it too by saying, boy, Donald Trump seems like the kind of guy who's been falsely imprisoned and tried to be killed. He's operating like that as some type of president.
Right. Just experiencing what we had the last 4 years and experiencing what we've had the last 7 days, it really gives me hope for the future. And, you brought up The American Dream with JD Vance. And if anybody has not read Hillbilly Elegy, I beg you, please go read it. It is one of the very best books that you will ever read. If you're not a reader, go watch the movie. It's on Netflix. You can watch it. It really tells, a story about.
As I said, it's uncomfortable, but it's supposed to be.
Exactly. It makes you realize like these things really do happen. It's not all sunshine and flowers and rainbows, and like shitty things happen to people, and people are brought up in horrible environments, but you can't let your situation define who you are or how your future will be. We just watched Bev up on stage watching her son being sworn in as vice president of the United States. And what a proud moment that it was for her. It's just so humbling hearing their story and seeing where he is now and the life he's made for himself, the American dream that he's created for himself.
It's so amazing. I mean, that really is the American dream. I mean, I guess the converse of that is sleeping your way to the top in San Francisco politics, and
Well,
being the wing woman next to Montel Williams and everything. But we don't have to hear much from her anymore, and the Democrat Party is going to have to find a way to regroup, because I like this coalition. We're only 1 week in right now. I'm going to be disappointed when there's a slow news day, because
oh my
it's just
gosh.
everything
Yeah.
is just it's building up to the point where I'm going to have such a letdown. It's going to be like a sugar high, and I'm all of a sudden exhausted.
No, it's one thing after the other. I have Twitter notification or X notifications going. I have Telegram notifications going, and I swear my phone is buzzed 150 times since we've been on here about different things that are being, headline news right now. It's definitely something that you have to keep up with at all times. And if you do a daily show, then you are busy, man. You are busy. Um, but it's a great time to be alive. I'm so proud to be part of the podcast community that is bringing the truth, that is chopping legacy media down. And, we're kind of teetering on the more popular side now. And I love that. Small voices, local action makes a national impact.
And there you have it, the Patriot Strong Podcast with Courtney Allen. There you can find it wherever you get your podcast. Anything else you want to promote other than the podcast? There, I think I also have your I have your Instagram account here. There's the business card that I was able to
Oh,
find
yeah.
and was able to get you on at
Well,
the Vivek rally.
yeah, you do have it pulled up right now. I shared that I was fired, or I shared that I exposed the LGBT curriculum. I was fired from that school for refusing the vaccine and weekly testing. So I do have Generous Kids Book Club up there. It is with my Patriot Pre-K that I started, which is just an online thing. It's not a paid for subscription. I do curriculum there. The Kids Club is great. It's a monthly subscription. Morals, curriculums, that kids can be proud of, that they'll really learn. Not DEI at all. We have to stand up and support American made, not these companies that support the DEI things that we are fighting against. Because as soon as you go buy your, whatever it may be from all these big box stores, you're signing your name to what they support. So I've also partnered up with an all-American company. They have 450 different products that you are probably already shopping for right now, from toothpaste, shampoo, snacks, supplements, all these things. And if anybody is interested, you can email me and I will be glad to send over some more information. My email is patriotstrongpodcast@protonmail.com.
Very nice. And I will say I've agreed with basically everything you said in this podcast, but I'm sorry, we're going to have to end with a disagreement because today we're recording this is January 27th, and I actually had this today, which is
Oh,
the
yeah.
Grater's Ice Cream, the company based out of Cincinnati, partnered up for the first time, weirdly enough, for the first time, with Skyline Chili to create a collaboration ice cream. And I did have it. I have Grater's up. I'm up in Cleveland. And I got to say, it was fantastic.
Was it? See, okay, that's what I need to go buy it. My son's like, if you try it or if you get it, you have to let me know. So I told him that if I can find where they're selling it, then we'll definitely try it. But it's funny that you mentioned that. I've yet to find somebody who has actually tried it. They did release it today. So now you make me intrigued, and now I have to go try it.
Yeah, it's at Grater's. I think Skyline has it, although I think we only have one Skyline in Northeast Ohio. I did have Skyline yesterday when I was coming back from Columbus, but yeah, I had it at Grater's, and I even bought a pint to try a little bit later. But if I can describe it, it's like a pumpkin spice ice cream.
Okay.
It tastes just like pumpkin spice because obviously they have the cinnamon and everything in the Skyline chili, and it's an acquired taste, whether it's Gold Star or Skyline chili, all this Cincinnati, but I love it. And the oyster crackers that are inside the ice cream, it's kind of like a pie crust, so it's like having a pumpkin pie type of ice cream, if I can describe that as best I could.
Interesting. Yeah, okay. So now I definitely have to go try it because I mean that doesn't sound too bad. It'll be fun to try. I'll have to let you know what we think about it over here.
Well, it may be fun, but I got to say, I did have fun here talking to you in this podcast. Courtney Allen, thank you for joining me from the Patriot Strong Podcast. Thanks for joining the Check Your Brain podcast.
Thank you so much, Tony, for having me. I would love to bring you over on Patriot Strong sometime so we can connect again. And I appreciate you taking the time to reach out and having me on your show. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I thank everybody for listening and watching this podcast. And if you enjoyed this one, I got another one coming up for you next Wednesday if you are listening for free or watching this podcast on YouTube for now until, who knows, whenever YouTube is going to sink their claws into my my content. I've already gotten dinged before. But if you enjoy this podcast, I do have more content on Patreon where I drop a couple of F-bombs every so often. I don't curse a lot, but I do it more for emphasis. And I put it behind a paywall at patreon.com/Tony Mazur, TonyMazur. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And again, yeah, I'll be back with you with another free podcast coming up for you next Wednesday. Bye, everyone.